Thank you very much. Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I was preparing for the video message myself, but then last week I had a change in job and I decided to leave all my ties at home, come and join you in Fight for Liberal Europe. And I do believe that Estonian Reform Party has quite some experience to share. We have been in government for 17 consecutive years, and 12 of that we have led the government as Prime Minister's party. When I was flying here yesterday on a board of Polish-Estonian joint flight, I read an interview with Tony Blair in Esquire magazine. And the journalist from Esquire made a point that no prime minister is ever more popular when leaving office while entering the office. And Tony Blair agreed. Well, I could argue. Just today I got the new poll results, and I'm proud to say that never during this 12 years as Prime Minister's party, Estonian Reform Party lost the confidence of the people. Estonian Reform Party, as of today, is up in polls at 23, and we were at 18 when I started as Prime Minister. And 12 years ago, when Andrus Ansip started, we were at 15 or so. So liberal ideas can be popular, so we need to work for that, and I believe that the trust of the people is something that really counts. Now, dear liberal friends, dear current and future leaders of Europe, it goes without saying that the EU is facing a lot of difficulties in the present day, but also in the future to come. Wars and invasions in our immediate neighborhood, including a country that is neighboring Poland, numerous attempts to intervene other countries' politics, unprecedented flow of illegal migrants, the rise of populism in Europe and elsewhere, a country believing in free trade and free market leaving the EU. I could go further for quite some time, but you probably get the message. We live in turbulent times. In a recent interview celebrating the 25th anniversary of Estonia and actually many other countries regaining independence from the Soviet occupation, a true liberal hero, Uffe Jelmel-Jensen, said that today's Europe is facing even more challenges than in the historic times 25 years ago. And a man with such experience as Uffe surely knows what he says. When times are turbulent, there is a need for true values and true leadership. And there is a need for liberal ideas and solutions to each of the crises. And we, as liberals, know very well that populism is not an ideology, and empty slogans will not provide real solutions, nor is it possible to fool the voters several times in a row. In this room today, I see many true liberal leaders who know exactly what the solutions are. Let me offer very briefly my vision on how to deal with most of the very pressing issues and how the liberal future of EU should be like. First, security in our neighborhood. It's no secret that the Kremlin plays a deadly game of creating spheres of influence. Putin himself considers the collapse of Soviet Union as a catastrophe, and whenever seeing a neighboring country choosing the path towards EU or NATO, he feels the urge to intervene. Sometimes using direct military power, as in Georgia and Ukraine, sometimes more hybrid tools, as in Montenegro, for example, but the message is always the same. And let me be very clear, the message is fundamentally wrong. We should not and will not tolerate the spheres of influence way of thinking in the 21st century of Europe. We must be rock solid on our message. every independent country has the right to choose its own destiny. We have the ways and means to support our neighbors in being successful. Many of the EU countries have themselves taken the road of reforming virtually everything to be meeting the EU quality standards, and thus many of us have a lot to share. Second, the rise of populism. History has shown us that from time to time there is a demand for simple answers to very complicated issues. Our task as liberals is far more difficult, but potentially much more rewarding at the longer run. To explain to our electorate what really works. Let me give you an example, the case of free trade. It is always easy to appeal to the people's conservative mindset and fear of losing their today's jobs. But the reality is, if we keep all the jobs we have today, we will not give room for progress and more, possibly much higher value add and thus better paid jobs. Would we really want back all the jobs of, let's say, 19th century? Well, of course we don't. In today's world, the wind of change blows much stronger and the transitions happen much faster. And the emerge of technology and new opportunities connected to that is just one very colorful example. So, if our goal is economic growth and prosperity, free trade is a must. Agreements like TTIP, CETA, and so on are needed to unify standards and abolish barriers. Let's keep in mind that when fighting with populism, we need clear, value-based messages that people actually understand and inspiring liberal leaders to show the way. Third, we need more brave solutions for crisis. We have had some success in addressing illegal migration, and the agreement with Turkey has been an important part of that. But it would be naive to keep all of our eggs in one basket and not to think further. It is quite clear that the EU is not able, or in some cases not willing, to invite all the people on the move to join us here. I'm pretty sure that this would be not the most preferable solution for the refugees either. Having been meeting many of them in countries neighboring Syria, I'm sure that they would prefer a safe haven near home in countries like Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey. Similar applies to many North African countries. So, if we really want to bring positive change to this crisis, we must invest heavily, and I mean heavily, in those countries to help them build shelter and provide food and education and also jobs. And I'm not talking about 1 billion or even 3. In order to make a real difference, we need to think at least 10 times as big. And fourth and final point, the EU needs real success stories. We all agree that digital, for example, is not only the future, but also the present day. But for some reason, most of the EU countries are still a bit resistant to introduce real solutions to become truly digital. Furthermore, we still have effective barriers as geo-blocking and different standards on the way. So imagine if we had the best practices working across the borders, everywhere in the EU. What a rise in comfort for citizens and what an efficiency gain for all of our governments. I believe that it is an absolute must to make free movement of data the fifth freedom of the European Union, and liberals must lead the way, obviously. Ladies and gentlemen, staying true to our values, plus being open and dynamic as a society, is the way forward. We know the path to take. Let's make that the EU will know to have it. Thank you very much for your attention, and may Europe stand free as a whole and at peace. Thank you very much.